Thanks for your time this afternoon. I'm really excited to be here and talk through kind of my learnings of helping other clients across the region establish their internal centre of excellence, as Barvik said, to get the best value they can in their organisation out of the Anaplan platform. So just in terms of the agenda, I'll go through about 20 to 30 minutes today. So in terms of the agenda, I'll just start by giving kind of the different profiles we see of Anaplanners. Not all Anaplanners or model builders are equal, and nor do they need to be. So I'll just give an overview of the different sort of profiles we see, and the reason that's important is because that can kind of define the different training paths and the roles that they'd have within a centre of excellence. So we'll start there. I'll then talk about the components or the elements of a centre of excellence. And you know, when we talk about a centre of excellence or define it, it's really an internal organisation. It's not simply just, how do I become an individual model builder? It's how do we as an organisation bring together a set of capabilities to execute on our connected planning or our planning journey that often our executive have kind of outlined as a vision. So there's different components to what an Anaplan Centre of Excellence is, and we'll go through each of those, and hopefully that will give you some good clarity on the things that you need to be considering in your own internal organisations. Following that, I'll give an overview of the approach, so the steps to go through to implement a Centre of Excellence, and we've worked with a few clients now across the world on establishing these, and this is sort of the approach that we see as being quite successful. I'll then just recap on the Anaplan training pathway. I'm sure you're all familiar with community and the available learning and the learning centre there, but that's been recently refreshed and some really exciting new updates to that. But that pathway is an important piece of actually getting the skills and capabilities from a model building perspective. So I'll run through that. And then finally, I'll just give some immediate next steps. So, where do we start? What's the call to action there? So I hope that sounds exciting, and I'll get underway. So in terms of, the different profiles we see as part of an Anaplan Centre of Excellence, which is the ecosystem really in your organisation, is kind of 5 different roles. Starting with, of course, your end users who interact with the Anaplan platform, for their planning processes and the different use cases. And they may not really be necessarily formally are an important kind of user profile, because they're the ones that we need to be successful for you as an organisation to get the best benefit from Anaplan. If they're enjoying using Anaplan and they're interacting well, pivoting data, etc., running scenarios, then you'll really see the momentum of Anaplan in your organisation increase. The next is the business Anaplanner. Now this is kind of the person who is probably owning a process or is in your finance or sales organisation, and they may not have the ambition or necessarily the time or capacity to become like a model builder to develop new models, but it's important that they understand the key building blocks of each model. They know the key components of Anaplan as a platform. They're able to guide the requirements and understand what's complex and what's not. They can probably write some formulas or update some dashboards and reports. And the reason that's an important role is so the agility of the Anaplan platform is able to be met, and that dynamic planning can work well, and models don't become redundant because the people that own the processes of these models actually understand the platform well and can guide and decide and continually improve the platform and the use cases. The next profile is the model builder. Now this person, through training and in their involvement in projects, gets quite deep into the model building process, developing new models from scratch within their organisation, and obviously maintaining the existing models. And they're a person who may not quite be at the point where they design the model from end to end, making some of the more ensuring some of the more better practices are implemented across all models, that data is consistent, but they're certainly taking charge of their area, whether it be finance or sales or supply chain, and the models that they're part of the organisation is responsible for. They're playing a key role in developing those models. So for that, they need to have completed sort of certain levels of the training pathway, which I'll talk about later. But they've also learnt from a solution architect on projects and continually spend a reasonable amount of time developing and maintaining models. So then the next role is kind of a key role, and that's the Anaplan SME or solution architect within your organisation. Now this person often plays a role across the multiple models, ensuring that the Anaplan better practices, because they've got more experience, are executed in these models. They're really familiar, I think, with all the available formulas. They know how to implement the data hubs, execute data hierarchies, etc., and just maintain the models across all functions and guide model builders effectively. So that means that when a new use case or an existing use case needs significant adjustment, they'd be a key stakeholder in the requirements gathering or the design and planning part, to make sure that the model builders then can build effectively to the standards that they should be. Then finally, and this may or may not be a separate person, but as kind of the data specialist, looking after any data integrations that you'll have across your ecosystem. And this person, it could be the solution architect or Anaplan SME. It really depends on how your organisation looks at structured and who looks after integration on the whole. So the main reason, the key takeaway I want you to take away from these different profiles is not everyone needs to be heading towards a model builder or a solution architect, but it's definitely advantageous if people can become business Anaplanners and that way guide the development of the models and have good, strong input, so that end users ultimately get the best value from the platform. So moving on then, within those profiles, here I'm just going to talk about the components of an Anaplan Centre of Excellence. And it sort of goes top to bottom in terms of, I guess, sequence or priority. You'll see the top four are kind of the initial priority of establishing and developing your Centre of Excellence, and the bottom four are kind of things that tend to come after you've laid the initial foundation. But if I just start with the Anaplan, the COE vision and objectives, that's where you'd actually work through as an organisation what you really want your Centre of Excellence to be and what the vision you have for it over time. And that differs amongst the clients in my experience. Some clients really want their Centre of Excellence to encapsulate sort of the planning process excellence, there's model building and solution architecture excellence, and even have executive participation in that Centre of Excellence, which is obviously encouraged, so that they can be wholly self-sustainable to develop new models, etc. Whereas other clients may see their Centre of Excellence being more just model building capability, whereas people who own the processes may not be part of that, or they may also still rely on consultants. So it's really just defining that initial vision, so that all the subsequent efforts go towards achieving that vision and objectives. The next thing is your COE organisation structure and key participants. So like any other function in your business or any team you're part of, that organisation needs to have a structure. Who reports to who? Are you centralised in one team and maybe a corporate headquarters, or are there participants in each of your markets or whatever? And that's kind of important, that you identify what that structure would look like as we then start to determine roles and responsibilities, and obviously then identifying who these people are and the key participants of the Centre of Excellence is the next step to establish. So once we have that, just going down on the right is determining the roles and responsibilities from each participant. And that's kind of linked back to those roles I described earlier. Are they business Anaplanner? Are they a model builder? they're the data specialist, etc., or they might be a combination. But depending on those key participants in the structure, you then want to be documenting who you would see doing what roles and having what responsibilities. Everything from maintaining existing models through to developing new models, and who's going to determine where the data is coming from and what dashboards who owns the dashboards and the user experience, etc. So segregating some responsibilities is often quite clear, and why that's important is because then those people can learn those, spend their effort and time available learning about the things they're going to be responsible for. So if you're someone who's more responsible for data integration and the data model, you're probably less focused, although still interested in maybe learning the UX or the user experience better practices as an immediate priority. Not to say it's not a goal to achieve all of it, but obviously we only have so much time to spend, so that helps us define priorities. So once we have that, we then create what I'd call an enablement and training plan, curriculum plan. So the enablement to me is really how do we get people involved in the projects or maintaining existing models and adjusting them, being familiar with how they've been built and the structures of them, using your organisation's data, etc. And also where the opportunity for new models exists, how do we get people in our Centre of Excellence on those projects to mean they're actually getting the necessary project-related experience, which at the end of the day is where it all happens. And linked to that, of course, is the prerequisite training curriculum. So as I'll talk about shortly, there's level 1, 2 and 3 all the way through to Master Anaplanner. So how do people, or when are you going to schedule these training? Are they going to be classroom? Are you going to expect people to do it online? So let's create a curriculum and a training plan for the participants of your Centre of Excellence. The other key components then are that I'll brush over are the employee performance management. So, once you've identified people and trying to motivate them to be interested in becoming a model builder and contributing to Anaplan models, we need to be confident. We need to motivate them and incentivise them to see that as a career within your organisation. So how in your normal sort of employee performance management cycle do we incorporate some KPIs and goals for them so that they become familiar with they become motivated to spend their time and put the effort into becoming a strong Anaplanner, and they'll see that contribution will advance their career in your organisation. The next thing is developing a project and change management methodology. So as your organisation moves to take ownership of the projects to develop new models, or even reasonably big changes to existing models, it's great if the organisation or the COE works to a consistent project and change management methodology. At Anaplan, we call that the Anaplan way, which is an agile approach to implementing models, and that's available, and we can educate and guide you on how that methodology works. Or you may within your organisation already have project management and change methodologies, but they should be incorporated into a way of working for your Centre of Excellence as well. Finally is just around some good data and governance processes. So data, like how do we have a data definition and library, how do we define our customers, how do we define our products and all these things, to mean that as we move across multiple models, we're implementing best practices. And then finally, the governance forums and processes. So within the Centre of Excellence, you should have, a steering committee with executives and key leaders, maybe a more centre management team, and then the core team members, and they should have meetings on a monthly, quarterly, or 6-monthly basis, etc., just to review how it's going, to see are we achieving our objectives, are we on track to achieve the vision of our Centre of Excellence. And also linked to that, are we delivering our projects on time, etc., and what changes do we need to make to be successful as much as we can. And then the processes are things like how do we manage a change? So does someone in the business request that to the COE? The COE considers that and responds with a timeline and amount of effort, etc. So how do we make changes so that things don't get out of control or models get changed without the COE being aware? and that's just good governance practices that I'm sure you probably have across other of your IT systems, but we need to make sure that we adopt appropriate ones for the Anaplan platform also. Okay, so hopefully that gives a good idea of sort of how we define and the different components of an Anaplan COE. So the next thing is, well, how do we do that? And it really does depend on where you're at now. Some of your organisations you probably already have the the existence of an emerging or potentially an established COE that you're looking to expand and grow, or you might actually be at the start of your journey in this. So it depends on where you are, but typically we see kind of 4 key steps. First, as I mentioned, was around establishing the vision and objectives. Then we need to design the Centre of Excellence operating model. Following that is really getting into the implementation execution of it, which is training and delivering projects. And then it's all about continuous improvement. And that's important, the continuous improvement aspect, because Anaplan as a platform, there's always new things to learn, and obviously within your organisation, as your processes mature and you move up the maturity curve and your planning and reporting and performance management processes, there'll always be new things to be continually improving on. So if I just touch on each of these steps, so in terms of how we go about that. So in terms of the vision and objectives, what we'd typically do is conduct a vision and design workshop where we'd do some brainstorming, and each person would contribute to what they see their Centre of Excellence vision being for their organisation, and we'd conclude that with a vision statement, which would be something that the COE would then own and use as they review, are they on track and are they achieving their objectives. Then we'd get into the design of the operating model, so designing as I said, the structure or the organisation chart, identifying the key people involved, and there might be a leader and the steering committee, and then there might be the core team, and each core team member would have identified their role. And then we move into determining kind of the roles and responsibilities in a bit more detail, and that will continually evolve. And then finally, as part of the design, is kind of the training and enablement plan, linked to what I said before about the importance of people getting on projects and doing the training. So that gives us a good structured overview. Our executive management is aligned and supportive of that. We might have identified that we need to change some people's roles. They may do less of the things they're doing now and become doing more of the Anaplan things they need to start doing, or we might even need to hire an additional person, etc. So once we've completed that design phase, we'd have a really good idea of what our COE organisation would look like. And then, as I said, the next 2 phases are really on the execution, and that is obviously where the rubber hits the road in terms of people doing their training, ideally initially in a classroom, but where possible connecting with other people of the Centre of Excellence, even if they're in different functions, trying to create this ecosystem so that you're not a siloed person doing your best to learn, but you've actually got people to bounce ideas off and test things with and share what your learnings are. And that's what we should be looking to do during the execution phase. So as I move on then, in terms of talking more about the learning pathway, so we've recently at Anaplan released the new training pathway. Some of you, this is mostly available on Anaplan Community under the Learning Centre section, and some of you may have seen this, but I'll just walk through how this works and how you can get started if you haven't already, or how you can continue to build on the training that you've already done. So we start with a level 1 training, and that's most of this is available online now as we speak, with the exception of level 3, which is coming early next year, hopefully in January, might be February. But the level 1 training can be a classroom training that would always encourage gets conducted if you're at the start of your Anaplan journey. And for those that have already done what was previously the Launchpad training or the 102 training, I strongly encourage you to do this online, because it's a really much improved training with micro lessons, which means you can go back to each individual section, whether it be, I'm I remember learning about a lookup or a sum formula, etc. And you can just go back and learn about that individual section in a short 5 or 10 minute segment. So it's a really helpful resource actually for you guys to not just do once, but actually continuously leverage as you go through that journey. So level 1 is obviously, you know, the learning topics get more complex as you go through the learnings, but the whole aspect is built around connected planning. So you start with the finance use case, and then you build on top of that into other areas of sales and supply chain with the data hub. So what we'd encourage is if you're looking to be a business Anaplanner, then as a minimum do level 1, ideally do level 2. And then certainly as a model builder, you'd want to get to that certified model builder level where you've also looked at the Anaplan way and understood that, so that you can be a key contributor to your Centre of Excellence. Then coming, as I said earlier, next year would be level 3, which again is a more complex level, more case study based, and will be a good test of your capabilities. You've probably looked to have done a project or be assigned a key piece of an existing model that you have by the time you're going through level 3. But then by then you're on your way to that solution architect and master Anaplanner kind of level. So for how you should incorporate this into your organisation, certainly speak to your customer success business partner. As I said, there's lots of material on our community page, so you can access it all there. But just be aware that this training is much improved and a great reference tool, and to be used alongside the projects that you're looking to do as well, because nothing replaces that. So finally, for me really is what's the call to action for everyone out there? And as I said, I'm sure you're all at different stages of establishing a centre of excellence. I'm sure, given that your understanding and appreciation of the Anaplan platform being feasible to be business owned, and given the dynamic nature of planning and the agile nature of it, we all recognise the need for that for organisations to be able to adapt their existing systems, and therefore, hopefully you're really keen on getting started on this if you haven't already. So how do I suggest you do that is yeah, as I said, we can conduct these workshops with you, but you could start by determining who the participants would be, what their roles would be, and what desired capability levels that you think they should get to. As I say, based on their responsibilities, they don't all have to become expert solution architects. Some may become business Anaplanners, and that's still a much improved, from my experience, if people have the leaders of the process can contribute to the model development in a more meaningful way, then that's also a big prerequisite to success. So once we identify those people and where we want them to get to, we can then determine their training plan, and that includes their enablement plan for each of those participants. And then hopefully we can get them on board with that. So, whether it be by the end of the year, I want you to have completed level 1 online, or in November we're going to run this classroom session and we want you to attend that. It's up for you to decide kind of based on how your organisation works, but setting a plan often helps. And then finally is the project enablement part. So wherever possible, if you've got a new project, and that doesn't mean to be a full new model, it could be establishing the model for next year's planning cycle, or deciding that you want to do a round of refreshment of your user experience. So you're going to go around and speak to your end users and say, what do you like, what do you think we can improve, what data don't you currently have that you'd need, and you could kick off a mini project to give people the opportunity to be learning things in an easy environment where there's not necessarily too much pressure on delivering something on time or urgently. And these screenshots here actually are from a model I've used with the clients I've worked with on a Centre of Excellence. I help them build a COE management model, and it's quite a simple model, but it just helps you sort of add people to the COE organisation, log what sort of level you want them to get to. It helps you manage or understand or register who's done what training, and establish when they're going to set some deadlines for what training they're going to do, etc. And then it also allows you to create projects within the model to mean you can sort of assign people to different models and track have they completed that, etc. And then from that information, you just get some summary reports to be able to present to your management, because often they want to know, the executives want to know, like, how are we going with the development of our people? Are people getting involved in projects? Are people doing their training to mean that eventually we'll be self-sustainable as an organisation, to mean we can deliver on our vision? And in most cases, the client, your organisations will have the vision of having an agile set of planning processes, and to do that, you need the internal team to be able to keep up with that. So they're the key topics from me today. I think, as already been mentioned, there's the ability to ask some questions on the user sign-in page under the Centre of Excellence section. So I'll be monitoring that for the next half an hour. As Barbet mentioned, my name's Patrick Thompson. I think my details are available on the user group live page, and always more than happy to share more information or resources. There's a Centre of Excellence section to the Anaplan community, and there's lots of reference material there. But I just encourage you guys to give it a go and get going, or if you've got so far, continue to just evolve and maybe replan what your Centre of Excellence would look like. And it's something executives are always excited to hear, in my experience, that teams are going about developing their own capabilities and improving the set of capabilities you have internally to improve your processes and business performance. So thanks very much for your time. Appreciate it, and I'll say thanks and hand over back to the team. Thanks, guys.